truckers get back closer to the full measure of flexibility in the hours of service rules enjoyed by so many owner-operators of the past? That is, the ability to split the 10-hour required rest period into 2 periods of any length they want. That's the option favored by a whopping 88% of readers who responded to our polling around the subject this time last year, with results published earlier in the year showing most readers wanted the ability just to split as they saw fit fundamentally, meaning any option up to 2 5-hour periods in the berth to satisfy the hours regs. Well, after Trucker Appreciation Week last week, we might see a path forward to that. I'm Todd Dills, your host for this Overdrive Radio edition for September 22, 2025, and I'll say it's not often we start the annual Appreciation Week with something other than a free soda or food at a truck stop or other deal from a vendor or supplier to write about. Yet, that was the case for our own senior editor Matt Cole last week, Monday, when DOT announced it was moving forward with a formal proposal to conduct separate studies around safety efficacy, longer sleeper splits, as well as a daily up to 3-hour pause button, as it were, for the 14-hour clock. For Cole, the news started with a tweet from DOT Secretary Sean Duffy that he saw come through.
I was just working on a Truck Driver Appreciation Week post, and he had a tweet on Sunday, just, the generic thanking truckers, which is great. And then not long after that, on Monday afternoon, press release came out about, moving forward with these studies, which had been announced back in June or July, I believe it was, that they were at least going to explore them. I don't think anybody expected action quite this quick, so that was a nice surprise early in the week.
As Cole noted there, the 2 hours flexibility-related studies proposed had been announced as forthcoming back in June as part of what the DOT called a pro-trucker package of efforts. Today on the podcast, my conversation with Cole digging into the details of the 2 proposed pilot programs, opening up a comment period that you can participate in on the proposal, and I'd encourage any of you to comment on it with respect to how regulators propose to set up and conduct the programs, each of which will be open to more than 250 drivers to participate. We're certainly months out from the interested participants being able to apply to be a part of it, and more details on that throughout today's podcast. Given each program will take years to bring to fruition, it could be quite some time before any subsequent regulatory action is taken. That is, unless another federal body pushes the ball more quickly forward.
Unless something crazy happens and somehow Congress were to get involved, which is not out of the question, I would imagine. But it would still have to go through FMCSA, so I'm not sure how much of an impact that would make on timing. But
absent congressional directive, further hours flexibilities for all drivers aren't likely in the cards before the next decade after these studies conclude, depending on the results, of course. And that means whatever administration follows the current one.
Personally, I don't see this as necessarily a partisan issue. If a Democratic administration came in 2028 or 2029, I guess it would be, that they would necessarily abandon the literature review for the split sleeper time was done during the Obama administration. So
work done nearing the end of the Obama administration, as Cole noted there, laid the groundwork for the first Trump administration's FMCSA to change sleeper splits finally in 2020, offering a few more options there, an ability to pause the 14-hour clock with both splits, previously unavailable for the smaller split. If these 2 studies show positive or even neutral safety impacts for participating truckers, it'd really get things moving toward change for the next government.
If the ball is already rolling, the outcome of the next presidential election may not matter necessarily.
After the break, run through the details with myself and Overdrive senior editor Matt Cole and prospects for these efforts to bear fruit long-term for what's probably the cardinal ask for Overdrive readers dating back to the start of the 14-hour duty clock itself more than 2 decades ago. Hours of service flexibility, that is. Keep tuned. Ask any driver. Winter diesel problems don't happen all at once. That's why Howe's Products offers total performance and protection. Diesel Defender cleans and prepares your system so you start off the season strong. Before cold hits, dose up with Diesel Treat to keep fuel flowing all winter long by preventing gelling in even the harshest temps. If you do ever get stuck, Howe's Diesel Lifeline is your rescue, reliquefying gelled fuel fast. With Howe's, you don't just face winter, you beat it. Visit HOWES, HowesProducts.com for more. Here's how I set up that conversation with Matt Cole. Here we go.
I don't know if we ever had this. A couple of regulatory related proposals from the DOT that I guess they suspect a lot of truckers might appreciate, and it's a couple of pilot programs related to hours of service flexibility. And these are not necessarily regulatory proposals. They are regulatory related for sure, but they are aiming to test a couple of different options for splitting rest time and drive time and duty time a little differently than truck drivers can do it today, and or that proverbial pause in the 14-hour clock idea, as it were. But anyway, there's two different proposals, and I know you've covered them in detail. Walk us through each one one by one, and tell us what DOT and FMCSA are up to here with the hours of service.
Two different proposals here. One of them has to do with split sleeper berth time. Of course, today drivers are allowed to split 8-2 or 7-3, and then they're looking at adding options to allow 6-4 and 5-5 splits as well. And so, this is something that it's been talked about several times in the past. I believe last was in 2019, but it was ultimately left out of the changes that took effect in 2020. The other one, like you mentioned, was the 14-hour clock pause, which they're calling the split duty period pilot program.
Okay, right.
That'll allow drivers. There's a few different scenarios. They can either take off-duty sleeper berth or on-duty not driving pauses between 30 minutes up to 3 hours. The on-duty not driving would have to be taken at a shipper or receiver facility.
Okay.
So, but the other could be taken anywhere. The example they gave was, coming into a major city before rush hour. You could stop before and, take a 3-hour nap while you wait for rush hour to play out.
And the idea here being that you can use up to as little as 30 minutes, but then up to 3 hours to basically pause the duty clock, the
Right.
14-hour clock, while you're resting or just waiting, as the case may be, because it does sound like, you can do this on duty not driving if you're sitting at a shipper or receiver. Well, in this test anyway. This is not a proposal to change the regulations. This is a proposal to launch a study of these two things, right?
Right, and these pilot programs, they're going to limit them to, they're saying 256 drivers for each pilot program. So very limited in scope. It's not going to be a whole lot of folks being able to participate.
And in terms of like a timeline, not for drivers actually being able to participate in this, what do we know about that at this point?
The tests themselves will be, for each individual, it'll be a 4-month test, but the entire life of the pilot programs, they're saying, are going to take up to 3 years to run through the entire thing and get all their participants to run through the program.
When do they plan to start soliciting participants is what I was particularly curious.
Oh, gotcha.
Do we know? Do we know yet? Or, I mean, I guess this proposal is just opening a comment period on the proposal itself, right? Which I think is open through sometime in November. So it wouldn't be before that, obviously.
In DOT's announcement Monday, they said protocol development for the programs would begin in early 2026. So I feel like that's probably when they'll start soliciting applications,
or at least start really putting together the kind of nuts and bolts of how they're going to do things. It sounds like I was looking through it a little bit earlier. There are some restrictions on people that can participate, and likewise, there's a whole lot of equipment that will go along for anybody participating in this, because I think what they're aiming to do with both of these separate tests is to basically have every driver participating in it basically use the expanded pause and or split sleeper options, and then all the while be quote unquote monitored, not necessarily. And I don't think they're going to put cameras in your truck or anything like that, but they're going to outfit you with some things and some tests that you have to take and some things that you have to. It sounded like maybe there were some audio diaries involved. I don't know. Kind of break down some of the the qualifications and the protocols that they've sort of proposed folks go through to participate in this.
Once applicants are selected, they will get a smartphone that's provided by FMCSA's contractor, whoever they work with to do this program, and then they'll also get a smartwatch. And it sounds kind of like it's going to be
kind of monitoring folks in terms of the actigraph watches or whatever you call that you wear when you're sleeping to sort of measure the quality of your sleep in some form or fashion. But
so you were right. I don't think they're going to be putting extra cameras in anybody's truck, but you are going to get another phone that's going to have certain apps on it that they gave the example of fatigue measurement and surveys. And I think that drivers would have to periodically input data into those apps on the phone. And then for the watch, obviously it would be tracking sleep quality, how long the driver's sleeping, what time they slept, intermittent wakefulness, all these different things that they want to see how these different sleep options or rest options affect a driver's fatigue or not, whatever the case may be.
I do think it's interesting that we're getting these proposals now. During the first Trump administration, both of these things were proposed to be studied early on. I think in 2017, to take us back there, like that was the time right as the ELD mandate is coming into play. You got a lot of angst amongst a lot of truck operators out there, a lot of owner operators, a lot of drivers, talking about the generally restrictive nature of the 14-hour duty clock in particular, which folks have been talking about liberalizing and or putting more flexibility tools into the sleeper periods since the 14-hour clock came into play, which was early in the century when the big change to the hours of service came down then. And during my entire time here at Overdrive, it's been a topic of discussion for sure. And then finally, in I think it was 2017 when they first when the Trump administration, the FMCSA, running up into that implementation of the ELD mandate later that year, I think that's when they proposed this for the first time. But I mean, what ended up happening was that they didn't actually do those studies, the studies that they're proposing today. I think what they did was more like a literature review, if I'm remembering that right. And I think maybe they talked about that in these register proposals this week that outline these new studies. Give us a little context for the way that they talked about the last change, because it didn't come down as a proposed rule or a final rule, I should say, until late 2019, early 2020, and it went into effect later in 2020, right before the election that year, which which changed over the administration a bit. But what do they say about the decision to actually go through with these pilot test studies of split sleeper flexibility, greater split sleeper flexibility, and this 14-hour clock pause?
You're correct on the literature review that came out in 2015, according to their Federal Register notice on split sleeper time.
15.
And
okay. You said 2015?
2015, yep.
Okay, so it was even earlier than I thought. Okay.
Yeah. And it sounded like the results there were pretty positive as far as splitting sleep does actually it restores splitting sleep into multiple segments is restorative, is what they said. And if implemented strategically, there's no negative impact on performance, is what conclusion they came to then. But, like you said, they didn't really move forward with it after that.
Except for the expansion that they gave truckers in 2019. After that review, they determined that like there's plenty of evidence out there to add a little extra time to the splits that are available to truck drivers, rather than just a maximum of an 8-hour and a 2-hour period. They went up to a maximum of a 3-hour and 7 to get your 10 full off duty. And they made a significant change that they made there was, okay, the longer period always cut the 14-hour clock, put it to a stop, but the shorter period in the prior version of splits did not. And with this change, if you took at least a 2-hour break in a split, it did stop the clock. So that effectively gave back folks that used the split sleeper that time, which is kind of a big deal. That's sort of gone over the heads, I think, of a lot of drivers that are out there today. But if we get back to the ability to go 5 and 5, what that'll mean, you have a ton of options. When it comes to sort of stopping the duty clock with a break of a certain amount of time. I think right now it has to be at least a 2-hour stop to effectively pause the clock. But
FMCSA said that when it started proposing hours of service changes in 2019, before they implemented those changes in 2020, they did ask for more data on 6 and 4 and 5 and 5 splits, but they said they didn't receive any during that rulemaking period. So they really didn't have anything to go on to allow those additional split options. So moving forward with the pilot program now is to collect data on those splits to see if it's something that they could implement industry-wide.
In the Federal Register notice asking for comment on both expanded split sleeper and so-called split duty pause pilot programs, there was no mention of one company that's been utilizing up to 5 and 5 splits now with an exemption from the standard hours rules for splits for 10 years. That'd be the McKee Foods Transportation Team operations out of Chattanooga, hauling McKee's famous brands like Little Debbie snack cakes. Seems to me that if there were decent data around safety and use of splits this way, McKee would have it, and FMCSA might be able to glean something from it. At once, given only teams are authorized to use those splits with McKee's particular exemption, results might not be as easily applicable to the entirety of the industry, thus likely the approach with these in-depth real-world studies. As we talked about earlier, the second of them is to test the use of 30 minutes to 3 hours worth of a daily pause for the 14-hour clock, off-duty or sleeper berth, but likewise on-duty not driving if used at a ship or receiver facility waiting, with some wrinkles there in how that time applies to the cumulative 60 or 70-hour limits under the hours rules, as you'll hear Matt Cole detail in what follows.
Sleeper, but then, around that same time, they were also looking at a potential, being able to pause the clock for that 30-minute to 3-hour window.
Right.
But there was a lot of concern that they received from drivers that they could be pressured by, whether it's their employer or shippers or receivers, whoever, to kind of coerce drivers into using that time when they don't actually want or need to, for things that would not be rest, which is what that would be intended for. Right. So at the time, they decided to forego moving forward with it. But now that they're trying to do this pilot program, they're keenly aware, of course, of that issue, and they said in the proposal that they would definitely be watching closely to make sure that those pauses are not used for things that they shouldn't be.
Kind of coercive purposes where you kind of fleet dispatch could sort of pressure a driver into stopping when he otherwise might not necessarily need to extend out a certain, whatever the case is,
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of different scenarios you could come up with, but
the general trucking industry's concern was more on the split duty time, being able to pause the 14-hour clock, but
striking a balance between, our readers are largely in control of their own destiny when it comes to their time. Not 100%, but nobody is, right? But yeah, I think it was OIDA that actually proposed the split duty notion, which is, I mean, basically like that's giving you the ability to extend your duty day out to 17 hours pretty much every day. You still got to take 10 off, but
well, it depends on how you use it. Okay. If they said that if you're using
in the proposal
on duty not in the proposal they said if you're using it with as on duty not driving time at a customer, then it would continue to count against your 60 and 70 hour clocks, so you wouldn't be able to extend your week. But if you use it as sleeper berth or off duty time, it doesn't count against your weekly clock. So you could technically do that one every day throughout the week.
Yeah, and extend the week. I got you. Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
So if you use it for detention, essentially, you're not gonna. You might work longer hours a couple of days a week, but your entire week will still be limited to 60 or 70 hours.
Yeah, depending on what cycle. Yep, that makes sense. What do we think, and what do we potentially know about the prospects of this? Coming into actual studies, finished up, pilot project analyzed, put into literature, published, considered, and written into regulation. Do we have any idea how long this takes? This sounds like it's going to be a long time coming.
Into the next decade, I would imagine, because they say the pilot program itself is going to take 34 to 36 months. So
that's 3 years.
Yeah, that's already putting us into 2028, 2029, depending on when they really get rolling. So, once they review all the data they do collect and then put out reports and further proposals if necessary to actually make it industry wide, I mean, yeah, we'll definitely be into the 2030s at that point, I would imagine.
So don't hold your breath on some great new flexibilities real soon.
Unless something crazy happens and somehow Congress were to get involved, which is not out of the question, I would imagine, but it would still have to go through FMCSA. So I'm not sure how much of an impact that would make on timing, but they did push English language proficiency through in just a matter of a couple of months earlier this year. So, stranger things have happened, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know if that's stranger or less.
Well, probably not, because it was already on the books. But still, I mean,
these folks are motivated to appeal to the average truck driver in various ways. I think, just judging by the announcement of this during the Trucker Appreciation Week, which it's not. I mean, our readers certainly don't make a huge deal out of that week, but it is an opportunity for the wider industry, and the fact that FMCSA put out HOS an hour's flexibility, announced a couple of studies during that week. It's significant. I mean, they clearly want to curry favor with the working truck driver, and this 3-year period that we were talking about for this study puts us right up against the next big presidential election in terms of wrapping up the study itself, maybe even after. So a lot of this could hinge on the willingness of the folks that are in FMCSA at that point to continue on with it. Whoever takes over the reins at that point, and it's interesting how this goes. During the last Trump administration, there were folks in that FMCSA no longer there today that were really motivated to get that hours of service change over the finish line, and they did. With this approach, this pilot project, I'm not sure if that's even possible under this particular administration, but it'll be up to hopefully up to the next one to continue down the road, depending on what the results are.
Right. Personally, I don't see this as necessarily a partisan issue. That if a Democratic administration came in 2028 or 2029, I guess it would be, that they would necessarily abandon the literature review for the split sleeper time was done during the Obama administration. So
right, sure.
Yep. There's some precedent there, and if we look back a little bit, that both sides of the aisle have looked at this, and it could be something that, if the ball is already rolling, the outcome of the next presidential election may not matter necessarily.
May not matter at all. Yeah. The science on all of this has changed, and they talk about that a good bit in the Federal Register notice this past week. The way that sleep is studied, and just kind of the literature around split sleep has changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. It sounded like to me, just reading through it. I mean, I think a lot of conclusions of some of those earlier studies where they kind of rejected splitting the split sleeper time were largely negative about, almost entirely negative about split sleep. But there's been a lot since then that is the exact opposite, which is fundamentally interesting. And most of those old school drivers that used to do this all the time would say to them makes total sense, because this is kind of how they rolled back in the day. And when it was real simple, hours of service wise, to just stop for 4 or 5 hours and let a rush hour die down and then keep going, right. Because it was, the hours of service were structured in such a way that didn't penalize you to do that. And
the regulators are in a tight spot. I mean, I'm personally of the opinion that nobody knows your body and when you need sleep better than yourself, but at the same time, they're regulating the entire industry of truck drivers. And there may be some drivers out there that, don't listen to what their bodies are telling them, and they try to abuse, if they were given more flexibility, they do try to abuse it. So it's a tough situation
to do so.
Or they're being pushed to do so, correct.
Yeah,
so we hear it all the time that the, first and foremost, the goal is safety and improving highway safety. So, there's a fine line there, I believe, that regulators have to toe. And, but, from a driver's perspective, I think these pilot programs are at least a step in the right direction there.
Indeed, I'd say. And though we're certainly settling in for a long haul in terms of executing both of these tests, unless truckers can convince their congressional reps to step in and require change, Cole sees some timeline positivity in the announcements of these programs last week, among other administrative actions this year. He referenced that Pro-Trucker package's list of action items.
And they're moving pretty quickly on that list. I'm just looking through it now. Removing one-size-fits-all mandates. They mentioned the speed limiters. They've already officially withdrawn that. They've announced these 2 pilot programs are moving forward. So, it seems like it was a little bit more than, just a talking point. They're trying to move forward with some of this stuff. So that's good to see out of any administration.
That's a wrap for this week. Find a link to the Federal Register notice and request for comment on the split sleeper and split duty programs, where you can weigh in on methodology and the like. Find that in show notes wherever you're listening. Likewise, in the post that houses this podcast for September 22, 2025 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, Overdrive's Facebook page, and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review there if you're enjoying these, and here's a big thanks in advance for it. As always, a big thanks to you for listening. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Wanick. Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tisha Mingo, Jim Whitehead, and drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator, Jasmine Campbell, senior editor, the great Matt Cole, we heard from today. Executive editor Alex Lockey. Video editors Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Gwynn. See you next time.